Hello, and welcome to Cinema Sibs. I am your co-host, Rachel Leishman.
And I am your co host, Patrick Leishman. And today we are doing one of my favorite movies of all time, the beginning of one of the greatest trilogies ever made. And no, I'm not talking about Lord of the Rings. No, I'm not talking about Back to the Future or even Star Wars. What are we talking about, Rachel?
We're talking about the Naked Gun.
Yes, The Naked Gun. And this is one of those movies, kiddies, that you should put your phone down while you're watching it because it is a gag a second, and some of them are visual, a lot of them are verbal, but this is one you want to pay attention to. You should pay attention to all movies, but we are all guilty of playing games, surfing the web, using our phones while a movie's playing in the background, unless you're in a theater.
That is true. And as someone who I've been getting yelled at by my roommate because of playing games on my phone while we're watching The Walking Dead, and then I miss little things, I completely agree with you.
Oh, but yeah, this one, I mean, some of my like favorite like jokes in movies like of all time is from these three movies. Now, we are only talking about the first one, which is a spin-off of a TV series called or it's I don't know if it's necessarily a spin-off, but it's a movie based on a TV series called Police Squad. Much like Firefly, it was on for one season, didn't get like its just due when it ran, and then they turned it into a movie. Unlike Firefly, they made two more movies after this one, and the Zuckers are still cool, I think, with Hollywood. Um, Unlike other creators of other shows that I've mentioned, like Firefly. But boy, I just freaking love this movie from the very beginning, where Frank Drebin is in Beirut because he needed to go on a vacation to get away from his lover that left him, and he decides to go to Beirut and takes out a bunch of terrorists like Yasser Arafat from a plan to destroy America, and that is what starts this whole movie off. And it is uh, a, just a fight scene where like Muslim leaders have like multicolored mohawks and people are getting thrown out of the window. Oh crap, I'm drawing a blank. Not Boris Yeltsin, but get Mikhail Gorbachev famously had a birthmark on his bald head, about right here, and Frank wipes the birthmark off and looks at the camera and breaks the fourth wall, and he's like, "I knew it," but that's just the start. I mean, Weird Al Yankovic's in this movie, and if Weird Al Yankovic's in a movie, how could you go wrong?
I mean, that's true. And I think the scene that he is in this movie, I think they also make fun of in Weird the Al Yankovic Story. I can't remember, but I'm 99% sure they also make fun of that in that movie.
They might. Weird Al Yankovic's actually in all three Naked Gun movies. In the second Naked Gun, which is the Naked Gun 2.5, The Smell of Fear, um, he's like robbing police squad. Like he's got a gun and like they're trying to stop him, and Frank like just hits him with the door. And in the third movie, which is the Naked Gun 33, and the third, The Final Insult, Frank like steals his ticket to go to the Academy Awards under the guise of Phil Donahue. So I mean, just that sentence alone should freaking make people want to watch that movie because Leslie Nielsen, dressed up like Phil Donahue, steals Weird Al Yankovic's ticket to the Academy Awards. Oh, like,
And
don't you want to know how or why?
I will say these movies are like my favorite joke, which is I think one that like you wouldn't think was my favorite joke in this movie, but I think it's genuinely funny. Is when the girl is on a ladder and Leslie Nielsen's like underneath her, and he's like, "Wait."
Hey, nice beaver. Oh, the whole sequence though, like she walks up the ladder to get
The
the
book.
logs for
Yeah.
Pier 32, which is we'll get to that because there's a reason why we picked this movie, and I know Rachel wants to point it out, so I will allow her to do that. But like, it's Elvis Presley's wife, Priscilla Presley, is the love interest in these movies, or ex-wife, whatever you want to call it. And she walks up a ladder and she's got a blue dress on. And Frank Drebin, who's the main character, just looks up and he's like, "Hey, nice beaver." And she says back, "Thank you. I've just had it stuffed." And he says, "Let me give you a hand with that," and reaches up and then pulls down the beaver. That is the whole gag.
That broke me that that is Priscilla Presley because she's blonde, and I think it just fully I did not register
Well,
that that's Presley.
she's not blonde in the
No,
second one with
but she is in this one, and I haven't watched these in
yeah.
years. So watching that, I was like,
Oh,
"Oh, I've seen this woman in things," not recognizing that it is Priscilla Presley because it was a woman in a blonde wig, and I was like,
oh no, yeah. I mean, these I there's so much about these. Like every one of the actors in these movies are like were like the decade prior, like dramatic, serious, like crime dramas. Like George Kennedy, who is basically Frank's partner, Ed Hockley. Um, freaking well, OJ Simpson was an athlete, but like he's his character and is like not really in this one, but like he gets flushed out in the next two. I think he murders some guy and his ex-wife, and one of them. Wait, was that a movie?
anyways, the reason we wanted to do this, and let me be clear, OJ Simpson passed away. This was on our list of like movies to kind of revisit and watch because Patrick's little post it. Patrick and my dad loved these movies, and then I remember watching them as a kid. So it was like my tertiary kind of I think how you interact with the movie Tommy, where dad and I watched Tommy the most, but you like know Tommy.
Yeah.
I think it's like that's how I am with the Naked Gun, where it was like you and dad watched these movies a lot, and I
Uh,
just would like see them.
Dad Dad was forced to watch these movies. I mean, there are so many good memories about like the whole trilogy, but like one thing about the Naked Gun movies is the third one. I definitely like watched that alone. Like it was on a vacation. Like it wasn't so sad that like I was
No
like
one wanted to watch
I
it.
have no yeah, like but like I vividly remember like them being like whatever movie came out in '94 when the third one came out at the same time, like our family was like, we're gonna go see, Sliver with a Baldwin and Sharon Stone or whatever that movie was, like, and I'm like, I'm going to see the Naked Gun 33 and the third, and I went and watched it by myself, and it was like I learned. I literally like learned there was other people in the theater and like I started talking to them. I was like 13 and this lady was like, "Gotta watch the credits, man. Like the credits are like some of the best stuff." And I never knew that. That's like the beauty of these movies is that like they just like every time you watch them, like you keep on. And I'm gonna reference that later. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but there's a scene with the Queen because yes, Queen Elizabeth is in this movie. She attends a baseball game. We'll get to all of that, but like, there's a scene specifically with Frank and the Queen, and I swear I never noticed before, but they just show pictures and anyways, but like it just like keeps on giving. Like, dude, at the end of this movie, I was shutting it off because I was like, I'm not gonna watch the credits. Like, I got kids, man. I got too much to do. And the one credit I did see, it said names of the people deleted from the fireworks scene. And then, like, so they weren't even in the movie and they're in the credits, like it's just stuff like that. But it's, I mean, one of my favorite gags of all time is in the beginning of this movie. So I'm just gonna like start with that. Well, first
Wait,
of all, you
I
get,
have to
okay.
finish explaining why we're watching this.
Oh yeah, go for it. Whatever. No
Then
one cares.
it was on the list, and then OJ Simpson died, and Patrick was like, "Damn, the juice is gone." Okay, so the Naked Gun. He didn't even wait 2 seconds. Also, in that same day is when I found out that OJ Simpson is the reason that the show Gargoyles got canceled. So I was just like, angry at OJ Simpson, and then Patrick's like, "Look,
That's what you were angry at OJ Simpson for?
no, other reasons," but it just fueled a new kind of
Right.
anger because I love the show Gargoyles. So I was like, "Oh, now I'm doubly angry at this man because a court case that someone my age remembered happening but couldn't really watch because I was like 5. I used to watch Gargoyles, and so then he got it canceled because it was a whole thing."
Yeah, a little bit of trivia about gargoyles. Do you know who the voices were for most of the gargoyles?
Oh, wait, yeah. Well, no. I thought I did. Now I don't know.
Okay, let me see if I can give you some hints. One is a commander on a starship. The other is a security officer who's lieutenant commander
Oh,
on the
yeah,
starship.
is it Frakes one?
Frakes, Michael Dorn. Like it's like the night. It's Star Trek: The
Yeah.
Next Generation.
As
I
soon as
mean,
you said
I don't
that
think
wait, do you wanna know what I was
I
going
don't
to
remember if Patrick Stewart ever did a voice on there,
no,
but
you know
yeah,
what I
like
was
it's a
gonna
lot of
say?
next gen people.
I was gonna be like, a hottie. A hottie did it, and I famously love William Riker. That's my boy, William T. Riker. So I was like, yeah, that checks out.
I'm sure Michael Dorn is going to be upset with those
I
comments. Yeah, he
mean,
was on the
I
show
don't
too.
find Worf hot, but I find Michael Dorn hot. That is
Do you find Silver Fox Worf hot though? I mean, I kind
no.
of felt a certain way.
Hold on, I'm gonna see which one was which. I'm looking up the show Gargoyles. It's on Disney Plus. You gotta get Lexi to watch it. Okay, Keith David is Goliath. That's crazy.
Yeah, how I
Michael
mean,
Dorn is
how
Cold
could you not
Storm.
know that Keith David was in that show? All that man has to do
Oh,
is
Marina
speak.
Sirtis. Yeah, you're right. Tim Curry's in this show. How could I not know? Patrick, I was a child when this show came out. I
Yeah,
wasn't
but you talk
one
like you
kid.
watched it yesterday. Like you're
No,
like,
I
I was
watched
so
it.
bad.
Yeah, because I watched it as it
Gargoyles.
aired, and I loved
When did it
Goliath.
air? Wait, no. Tell me you since you have it up. What years was it on?
1994 for it started for 3
I,
seasons, so right when I was a kid watching cartoons.
I hey, why are you being so offensive or
Well,
defensive?
the reason
You're
someone
reading into me. I mean, was I gonna do like something
yeah,
dickish?
you
Yes, but I was smart enough not to imply that, and then you like come at me like
I
I did,
knew, but
but I didn't.
the thing I
It was
saw
unjustified, is my
oh my
point.
god, but you were going to. This is what happens when
But I
I've known
didn't. It
you
never
for
happened.
this is what
I
happens
can't.
when
I
I've
mean,
known
you
you
created it.
this is what happens when I've known you for almost 33 years. I just knew it was coming.
Almost.
Yeah, almost 33 years. The what I learned was that Gargoyles, because it was so successful in like 94 and 95, they were like, we're gonna order 58 episodes and then just air them one after the other. And then the OJ Simpson trial happened and they like couldn't air Gargoyles as they originally had planned. And then everyone was watching the
Why?
OJ trial because they couldn't do it every single day because the trial was having coverage. So the networks were like, well, we're not doing this. And then
Oh,
by
was
the
that
time
back when Disney and Court TV were the same channel?
it wasn't on Disney, it was
It's on.
on like CBS or something. It was on like a regular
It was
ass.
on. It was on like Fox Saturday Kids, something like that.
Well, no, it was on every day. That was the whole thing, was that they wanted to do it every single day. And so then because of the trial, they couldn't do it. So then the season they ordered, they were like, "We're not gonna air it like that." And then when by the time th they could, no one cared anymore, and then they canceled the show, and so it's OJ's trial's fault that Gargoyles got canceled.
And what does this have to do with the Naked Gun?
OJ
No.
appears.
Yeah.
The juice
The
is in
juice. The juice is the reason for the plot of The Naked Gun
yeah.
and the reason why Rachel's favorite show got canceled back in 1990
or 7,
something,
whatever.
94. Yeah. And the reason why White Broncos were canceled for a while. OJ Simpson ruins everything.
Did you see you know you didn't. It was on social media, so I'll explain it. Somebody said that they have the most iconic option to do a funeral procession. And it was to put him in a white Bronco with all of the cop cars behind him. And I was like, we're all laughing at a dead man, but also it's OJ Simpson. who
No, we're
big
laughing at a guy that was fleeing because he murdered someone. Like, we're
and then
cracking all these jokes,
he
but
told us I didn't do it. We all know he did,
and then
especially
wrote a book that said, "If I did it." Like, I mean, it's
Confessions of a
terrible.
Killer, I think is the full title. I think it's If I Did
I
It:
think
Confessions of a Killer.
yeah,
Let me see.
Confessions of a Dude
Of
That
the
Definitely Did
Killer.
It. That's the
Of
subtitle.
it's
What?
it's of the killer. So it is If I Did It: Confessions of the Killer is the
Yeah.
book that
You can't try me for it because that's double indemnity, so
Double Jeopardy.
whatever, man.
I only know that because of that movie with what's his
I
name?
indemnity is a word that's been in my head for a few months, okay?
Okay.
I
I
can't
just
I
know
can't
it's
help it.
Double
It's there.
Jeopardy because
It's
of
in the
that
ether.
Ashley Judd movie. I forget who else is in it other than Ashley Judd.
Okay, so The Naked Gun.
Yes. Oh, it's Tommy Lee Jones.
O.J. Simpson. It's a dark night at the L.A. harbor. O.J. Simpson finds a
Yeah,
boat called I Love You.
the LA Harbor. We lived in California for multiple years. I have never seen the LA Harbor. Is it by the
I
airport?
actually was like when I watched it, and I was like, because I've seen the movie like countless times, but like when you're watching it to be prepared to talk about
Yeah.
it on a podcast, like you look at things different. And I was like, I mean, there's an ocean, and yeah, like I mean, there's probably a harbor. Like I lived there for almost a decade. Like, shouldn't I know that?
What's why I was like,
And
is
then
it
I was like, you know what? It's not worth looking up because there's O.J. Simpson and it was gone. Like, you know what I mean? That's
is
how
it
much
by
time.
LAX? Because there's like there are harbors further down, but I was like, where exactly is this harbor that he's hanging out in?
It's right by the L.A. River that Arnold Schwarzenegger drove through in Terminator 2 while the T-1000 was chasing him in a semi,
Oh, there is the Port of Los Angeles.
which is a port. Is that
Well,
also a harbor?
I
Like
guess
this is it AKA
when I looked up
Los
the
Angeles
LA
Harbor?
harbor, it just said Port of Los Angeles, so I'm assuming that it is the same thing.
Who knows? I should have paid more attention in school when they were like, one of these things is not like the other,
All I know
or
is that when
whatever.
they all come together, that's a delta. That's what I remember from school.
Okay.
Anyways, the harbor.
So it opens at the LA Port of Harbor. OJ Simpson wearing a ski cap and a what are those
He had
it's like
a peacoat.
a jack a
Peacoat.
peacoat, thank you. And he pulls out his little microphone dish thing and he listens and they're like, we got the heroin, we're gonna meet, and like all this stuff.
Did you talk about
And
his
then OJ goes, what?
Did you talk about his beanie? Because I think that
Yeah,
is also a funny addition is that he has this beanie on, and he's,
in
like,
LA.
in LA, just, like, listening with like, the biggest disc thing.
It's like about that big. Yeah,
But,
like
like
it I mean, but it's just funny because right after that, he decides to go and arrest them. And no one ever talks about how did he get on the boat because the boat wasn't like it was kind of out there in the water. But whatever, he's OJ. He probably jumped. And he goes and goes to kick in the door, and his foot just goes through the door, and the door stays locked. And then he comes in, and they shoot him, or he pulls the gun, and he's like, "Police, freeze, you're under arrest, and drop your weapons." And everybody they shoot him, and then there's a bunch of like where the window closes on his hand. He lands on a hot stove. I'm not saying all the gags on purpose because if you haven't seen it, you should definitely watch this movie because I could spoil the entire plot. Like that's the one thing that I want to say is that I could start this with like, hey, spoiler alert. The plot is to kill the queen, and Ricardo Montalban, Khan himself, Victor, what's his last name? Victor,
oh, it's like Lombard it's like something that does not make any sense. Hold on. The Naked Gun cast. It was like Uh,
I have it right here.
Ludwig.
Yeah, Vincent Ludwig. That's right.
Because I was
Vincent's
like,
not
why is
Vincent.
Ricardo Montalban's last name
Right.
Ludwig?
And with all the intensity of Khan Noonien Singh himself walks into the room in silhouette and then steps into the light and goes, kill him. And then that's when they shoot him and he it's just you got to watch it. Like, but that's the point. Is like what I was making is that like okay, Ricardo Montalban, his plan is to kill the queen. Like
Yes.
he's gonna make a lot of money doing it, and he's gonna do it with hypnosis, like by hypnotizing people close to the queen so they kill her. I just told you the plot to the freaking movie, right? And the other point of that plot is that Priscilla Presley, Jane, is Vincent's secretary or assistant, whatever you want to call her. And he basically tells her, hey, get close to Frank Drebin, who's investigating this, because Nordberg was his partner, and Nordberg, who's OJ Simpson, is like under investigation because he has heroin on him and there's no reason why, and he's trying to clear Nordberg's name, right? He sicks Jane on him to seduce him to find out what he knows, and they fall in love. And at the end, he uses the hypnosis to try and kill Frank through Jane. I just told you the whole plot of the movie ruined nothing. That's the
Mhm.
point. That like the plot, that's the plot. It is what it is. It's everything else that happens in this movie. It's the conversations. It's a film noir. It's a detective story, but it's a parody of those. So you have like these great moments where like there's voiceover and Frank's just walking around town and and, and like those, I mean, it's sight gags, it's visual, it's verbal. Like my favorite joke of possibly of all time in any movie is when Frank comes back from Beirut and Ed picks him up at the airport right after he thinks that the press is there for him and they're actually there for Weird Al Yankovic. He gets in a car and Ed starts telling him like, yeah, she got married, like, and they're talking and he's like, Frank, you just need to forget about her. And he's like, that's why I went to Beirut to forget about her. But everywhere I look, I see things that remind me of her. And he looks up, and there are two silos there that look exactly like breasts with nipples and everything. And it is like one of my favorite jokes of all time in any movie. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I was a young boy when I saw it. I thought it was hilarious, and it just always stuck with me. But like this movie is full of crap like that. Like I couldn't even sit here and name all of the freaking jokes that
Yeah.
happen, but there's definitely some favorites. Like I can tell you, and Rachel, even if you didn't watch this movie with our father ever, what do you think his favorite part of this entire movie is?
Oh, his favorite part? Because I was like,
Yeah,
I know a joke that dad probably would have laughed at a lot because I ended up
no,
laughing at it and I thought of dad when I laughed.
a
Um,
set piece, like a whole set piece of like. What do you think? I mean, it's pretty obvious if you think about it for like 5 seconds.
well, I mean, I'm assuming the baseball stuff, but also I'm trying to think
Yes,
about what
when
was a woman with because dad's always laughing at some
No,
things that are
it's when
so
Frank becomes
silly.
the umpire at the baseball game and he's a complete homer.
Oh wait,
And Dad's
yeah,
like, we both talked about it. Like, if given the opportunity to like umpire a Pirates game, like in the manner that Frank did, 100%, I'm calling everything in Pittsburgh's favor.
my
Like
my
everything.
letterbox review is that baseball game would have been fun as shit. Don't even pretend. Like I literally was like that baseball game would be so much. You know what it
Oh,
reminded me of? The Savannah Bananas and like that kind of baseball where everyone's just fucking around. Like I was literally
no,
like,
but it's the California Angels versus the Brewers
oh excuse
or
me. At that point,
the
they were the
Mariners, the
Anaheim.
Seattle Mariners, I
Yeah, but
think.
they were the
What?
Anaheim Angels at that point. It was like they were
No, they
Anaheim.
were the California Angels
Oh,
in
they.
1988.
I thought they were Anaheim.
No.
I don't. That team is nuts. But I my favorite joke in this whole movie, outside of I think the beaver one is just very funny how it is staged.
Hey,
I
nice beaver.
think Ricardo Montalban walking up to him and going Cuban, and he goes, "No, Dutch Irish," is
I was just
really
laughing.
hilarious.
I laugh at so much. Like, I mean, that like is it all started with Airplane. Like, I know they did like I'm not entirely familiar with the timeline, but I know I think they did like Police Squad. Like it went Airplane, Police Squad. Then there was like Airplane Two, and then they got the Naked Gun movies in there, and after that, the parody genre, like in that vein, where it was like a gag a minute, like it kind of got depressing after that. Like I personally, I think the height is this Naked Gun trilogy, and then it kind of, I mean, the good ones are the ones that the Zuckers are involved with, like
Mhm.
the later scary movies where the Zuckers like come back and they do like those ones aren't bad, but it's just it was like the right time, right like 10-15 year period, and then it's just kind of like you're not going to get him anymore, like but dude, yeah. How about when after like that scene where it like because what you said is he's like Cuban and he's like, no, I'm Dutch. The father was Dutch Irish. Like that right after that's the hey, nice beaver. That's where he meets
Yeah.
Jane. And then right after that, like Frank's like doing his walk around where he's like talking about everything, and then all of a sudden he's just like, and also, where am I? And then it cuts to him and he's just like walking and he's like in the middle of the woods and you hear like a coyote, and then he goes home, and that's when Jane's there. But like that's also the best part because like they do the gag where like there'll be a gymnast that does this crazy gym move and then lands behind a couch, and then Leslie Nielsen pops up in the same shot. Like, you know what I mean? And
It was
he's just like
the
when he's
umpire was
scoping
the
out the
best
house to
part.
see who broke in.
The umpire
What?
was the best part because you could clearly tell it was a dancer with a gray wig on, and then it was just turned
Hey,
on Leslie Nielsen.
right. Also, there's a thing that this movie proves, and so does Toy Story and the TV series Monk. And I know, but if you think about it, there is one through line between all of those things I just named. All those things feature music by Randy
I was just
Newman.
gonna say, was it Randy Newman?
Yeah, Randy Newman doesn't do soundtracks for shitty movies, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, because I was like, well, I know Monk and Toy Story have Randy Newman. I didn't notice a Randy Newman song, but I was assuming there
Yes,
was one in
the
the.
baseball game. Soon as Frank
Oh,
realizes that he's in charge of the game, and he's a homer
I
for the
was too busy
California
watching
Angels,
Leslie Nielsen. I
it starts playing "I Love L.A." and that's where he's like dancing, and
oh,
he's like, "You're and he's just like, oh,
the
like he
best
busts
is
out the vacuum cleaner to clean home plate.
the other joke that was really good is when it's like, um, the like he starts that baseball game as basically Pavarotti, but he comes out as like
No, Enrico Palazzo.
I know, but he's essentially Pavarotti, and he comes out as Enrico Palazzo. He sings the national anthem horribly, and then
It's the best.
gets kicked back out, and then he knocks out an umpire, comes back out as the umpire, and then at the
And
end, when like
bombs everywhere.
wait,
But like you're
wait,
glossing
let me
over
finish
all the
this.
great parts of
Yeah, I
that stuff
know,
too.
because I'm getting to the joke, which is when he takes off his mask, and he's
The
like,
bad guy from Pee Wee's Big Adventure is the dude.
well, no, when he take I'm talking about the very end of all of this, when he
Yes,
take
the
this
guy who goes,
oh,
"That's Enrico Palazzo," is the bad guy from Pee Wee's Big Adventure, which is
well, but
starring
it's
Paul Rubens.
so funny because it's like he does it to his police or to the judge, and he does it to Frank or not Frank, his buddy Ed. He goes like this,
And yeah,
and they're like, "It wasn't an umpire." That the whole audience is like, "Enrico."
no, it's like the police captain. It goes like this. Ed figures it out first, and then like they talk because right before the seventh inning, when they get in, when all the chaos starts, Ed's like, he's like, Ed, I frisked everyone. Like, I can't find the weapon. He's like, you got one out, Frank, until the seventh inning stretch, and then they're gonna try to kill the queen. You can't let that out happen. And then that's when like all the chaos starts, and he saves the queen with like a joke that is not cool nowadays, but in the 80s, which is like he shoots a fat lady with a blow dart, and she
Yeah.
actually saves the queen by landing on Reggie Jackson. But that's when like it's like revealed like three times because the police captain's the first one. She's like, that umpire, he saved the queen, and Ed's like, that's no umpire, and he takes off his mask and like smiles, and then that's when he notices, which is another great part that Ricardo Montalban is got Jan or
Going like
Jane.
this.
Yeah, yeah, where it's like, I mean, it's so bad that it's such a horrible wig. Like, it's clearly not Ricardo
Yeah.
Montalban either, you know. And I know, I mean, I don't know a ton about him, but like, he walks like he has a fake leg, or there's something wrong with one of his legs. Like, do you have you notice? Like, it's always like it's always like he comes up on one side and then down. Anyways, and they're walking up the stairs, and it's clearly like a blow up doll that he's just like moving around like a rag doll.
Oh,
That's
he hurt
when
his
Pee Wee
leg
Herman's.
after a a horse rode over the actor during production, and it caused him to have a limp.
Oh, okay, yeah, because I was gonna say he doesn't have that in the Wrath of Khan,
Yeah,
and I've seen
according to
that movie a couple
Khan,
of
no,
times.
but this was according to the Wrath of Khan director Nicholas Meyer. Montalban suffered the injury after a horse rode over the actor's leg during production. So was it during the
Most of the
Wrath of
time, though, he's sitting down in that movie. Like the only time Khan's really standing is when they go to City Alpha 6, thinking it's City Alpha 5. Like that's the only time he's like I can really picture him on his feet. Most of the time he's sitting in his chair where he's standing and not moving, talking to Kirk on the view screen. But I mean, I don't know. I've seen that like once or twice. I'd have to go back and make sure.
Yeah, once or
But
twice maybe in the month of April.
maybe once or twice today. Like I was just thinking, like my birthday's coming up. Like can't wait to wake up and watch Wrath of Khan like I do every birthday. It's like
Aren't you gonna
anyway,
be out of
so
town?
no, the next day.
Oh, because I was like, the whole reason I'm staying happy for our
I'm
listeners
leaving.
happy for our listeners to know our plans because I'm coming that weekend, and I was like, yeah, but I thought you weren't there, and that's why I'm
No,
staying.
I took off my birthday and then the following 2 days are Thursday and Friday.
Oh, yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm leaving like I my flight leaves early in on the next day on Thursday. So
So Wrath of Khan is in full effect.
I would have watched it on an airplane, man. I don't miss that movie, especially on my birthday. It's comfort food. But the Naked Gun. So I mean, dude, there's just guys. It's just a freaking awesome movie. Like, and the gags are just one after another. I was snapping my fingers for all those listeners and not non-viewers
I
out
feel
there.
like the snap was clear, regardless of where you were listening. It was very clearly a snap.
But I just, I mean, dude, like I just want to talk about like the stuff I noticed this time around because that's the point. Is that like I know that there are movies, that there are people out there that are like, how can you watch movies over and over again? And I get it. Some people are like, I've seen that, I don't need to see it again. And other people are like me, and it's like I'm gonna watch The Wrath of Khan multiple times in a year, just like Star Trek Deep Space Nine is like my favorite of all the Star Trek shows. And literally, I've seen it 10 times. It's like over 200 episodes long. I've literally watched the series the whole way through 10 times, not counting this the rando episodes that are on TV that I watch. Like
I
those are
will
different.
say it is very funny because our mom is very much like, I will watch this movie one time and I'm not watching it again. But then our dad was the complete opposite. So, like, mom, I don't know
Oh,
if I've
any
said
movie
this.
that had a mildly attractive woman that he liked.
Well, I didn't even know this. Mom had to tell me this. I don't know if I've said it on the podcast yet, but like, one of my favorite movies of all time. It is still one of my favorite movies. We don't have it on the list, and I think because it was more just like my thing was the movie Labyrinth. Like it's one of my
Oh
favorite.
no, I love Labyrinth.
And then we should put
Voodoo
Labyrinth on that list because
rocks
Labyrinth is one of
for
my
Ed.
favorites. But I
Hoodoo,
remember,
voodoo.
I remember how I got
David, wait,
VHS.
wait, let me finish that sentence. David Bowie's crotch.
Yes, correct. No, I remember
You
how I
remember
got.
David Bowie's crotch?
Can I finish talking? Um,
Sorry.
I remember how I got the VHS because it was like mom's hairdresser at the time. Like would take mom downstairs and then her daughter would babysit me essentially and gave me
Anna, right?
yeah, gave me the VHS. And because she was like, "You are the only one who watches this because when you come over, you wanna watch it." And mom said, and I didn't even know this, that apparently I dad was the one who would sit with me and be like, "Yeah, I'll watch Labyrinth," and would just watch Labyrinth with me on repeat as a
Well, it's
kid.
because of the Muppets. That's a Jim
Yeah,
Henson movie. That's a no-brainer.
but I
I am
didn't
not at all
realize
surprised by that. Because
I mean,
Jim
I'm
Henson
not
famously never did drugs, but dad is like convinced that like he was stoned the entire time. It's like, no, you were, not him.
Jim
Like,
Henson not
like, you know what I mean? Like that, you were the one that was stoned. Jim Henson, like, they can't say enough that he didn't smoke weed.
and dad's like, I don't know about that." But yeah,
I'm telling you, man, he was, or at least he made it for guys like me.
he made it for
That's
children.
what he won.
He made it for her, like, the kids watching this. You
Think
just
about
have
it
to
though. Like, I
also
mean, it just all makes sense, doesn't it?
but it is like I when mom said that, I was like, "You know what? That makes sense because the one who would rewatch movies 100 times was dad, so it's not surprising that he's like, "Yeah, I'll watch Labyrinth, put it on."
Just a quick thing to put it all in perspective for you. Our dad's story about Woodstock, because he was definitely hippie, was that
Where
he
he
got there the day after it was over. That's his story
well
about Woodstock.
well, no, there's more to it. It's that he got there while it was happening, but he couldn't find parking. So by the time he found parking and could get up there, it
Because they
was
went in a Volkswagen bus, by the way, that it was his, that they would just switch out the engine. Like when that engine would go, like his buddy, who we still call for his birthday every year, just would like,
Mickey.
because apparently you can switch out Volkswagen buses and bugs with like a 2x4 and a wrench. You can switch those engines out. Like, I guess you can pick them up. I don't know. I don't know cars, like unless it's in a movie.
I feel
But
like dad's story
speaking of which, that's another gag, real quick, is that Frank Drebin wrecks that car every time he drives it. Just,
the best
I mean,
is when he goes, "Did anyone get that license plate?"
then you can tell he realizes that it's his car, and he's like,
I gotta go inside.
yeah,
I was
yeah,
gonna say,
and
I was
then
like,
that's where you
dad's
meet.
stories would relate back to this movie and how, like, they all are telling something and then it just, like, goes off the rails and you're like, "What the hell are we where did we end up from where we started this scene?" But it's so funny, it's fine. You're like, I don't even I sat here this morning, put it on thinking, "Well, I've seen this movie. I'm not probably gonna pay that much attention. I don't care." And then I just sat on my couch and was like, "I gotta watch." I didn't even make coffee. I didn't do anything. I just sat here and was like, "I have to watch The Naked Gun."
Every time I just smile, like I'm like this, smiling the entire time I'm watching it, because like I said, it's just like constant. It never stops. Like they don't let up for 1 second in anything. Because like even that scene, what I said, where Frank, we're up to the point where Jane tries to seduce Frank, and she's like, "I'm boiling a roast. How hot and wet do you like it?" And he's like, "I like it very hot and mighty wet." Like whatever he says, it's like, what? It's the grossest crap ever. But it's great because when they're about to bone, she goes, "I'll have you know I practice safe sex," and they're wearing Trojan full body condoms. Now, with all that being said, the sex scene gags in the other two Naked Gun movies are way better than this one. But it being the first one, and that's the first joke you see, I remember it not making sense when I was a kid because I was 7 when this came out in theaters, which means I was like 8 or 9 when I probably saw it for the first time. Because the first Naked Gun movie I saw in the theaters was 33 and a third, like the third one.
That was
Because I
late,
know that because of the
wasn't it?
story. What?
That was like the late 90s, wasn't it?
No, 94. It goes 88, 91, 94. Those are the years they
Oh,
came out.
I don't know why I thought they
So I
were
was
late.
like 13. That's what I mean. That was the first one I saw in the theater because could have probably saw the second one, but I was too young to go by myself. And one thing I can say without even asking her is that mom does not get these movies and does not like them. Doesn't make any sense to her.
Well,
And
and
it's
she
sad
was
because
probably either pregnant or had a newborn.
No. Oh yeah, I mean, not the first one.
No, but for that second
Um,
one, so she was, like, also probably not like, "I'm not prioritizing going to the theater
oh
to."
no, it's not even that. She just doesn't. I know that she wouldn't like that movie. Like I mean,
Yeah.
she's our mom. I've known her longer than you. There's no
Yeah,
way.
because it came out in the middle of summer of '91, so she was it
Okay,
legit
that's what I was trying to find.
so
Yeah.
she was, like, 5 months pregnant. Because that was what? No June and November is how many months?
Well, June's the 6th month, November's the 11th,
So
so I would
yeah,
say
so she was,
5.
like, 4 months pregnant then. 4 to
But
5
yeah,
later.
anyways, uh there's I mean, it just once Jane comes into the picture, that's when like it gets really good. Like they're doing the stakeout, and on the stakeout, folks back in the day, because I know this is literally like an age gap thing. I don't even know if you know this, Rachel, but you know how pistachios are green, and they're like famously the bags are green, everything about them are green,
Yeah.
right? Well, back in the day, pistachios used to be red because they would have like that's the
Yeah,
gag where he's got the red all over his fingers and his mouth. Those are
I
pistachios. They're eating pistachios
I
on the
understand
steak.
that. I need you to explain to me, was there a whole gag in this movie about pistachios always having green bags, or is this the second time within less than 24 hours that someone has talked about the green pistachio bags to me?
There's no gag. I was just
Wait,
pointing out that like
this is the
there could be
second time
confusion
that
because the reason why pistachios were red is to preserve them. And that's why they had that stuff on them, but they don't do that anymore. So like they're their natural color and they're not red, they're actually green. But I was saying that that's like a gag that's kind of dated. That's why they had like red all over them
yeah,
and stuff right
like,
on their stakeout.
that is crazy to me because that is now the second time within the last 24 hours that pistachios being green has been a topic of conversation. I feel crazy. I was like, "Was that you? Who talked to me about it?" I think it was in the show I saw last night. Sorry. Th that
No,
was
you're fine. I
weird
just
weird connections.
but it's there's a theme on these gags, okay? Like I will say this because the next scene after they're staking out, what they're staking out is Vincent Ludwig's like office, and there's I mentioned it with OJ. Frank does it too, but there's these where they start where it's like, whoa, that was close, and then they place like the thing down like gently, and then right after that, there's just like all kinds of crap. And basically, they find out that Vincent Ludwig left, and Frank goes to break into his office. And earlier, when Frank was there, they've established that he's got priceless artwork and like rare vases or vases, and like endangered fish and like all these things like in his office. And Frank goes up there to get evidence about them trying to kill the queen. And and he almost like there's a card tower with paper under it, and he pulls the paper out and he's like, whew, the card tower doesn't fall, and he like reads the paper and he's like $20 million to be transferred upon death of the queen, and he's reading it with a lighter and he puts his hands down and the paper catches on fire, and Frank destroys every
And
vase, every. I mean, there's a player piano that's like playing like it's not the Benny Hill song, but
it's
it's
not The Entertainer, but it's something like that.
like it's in between those two songs, yeah. And like he just destroys this office, and the, the best is then he climbs out onto the ledge, and there's statues around, or gargoyles if you will, around there. With one is a woman with her naked breasts, and then the next is a man with his stone giant penis, and Frank's grabbing the breasts and skipping over the penises and grabbing the breasts, and then like he turns a corner and there's a large breasted actual woman with her window open while she's combing her hair, and he grabs her breasts and she screams, And then there's several gags of him performing fellatio on a statue. And then the next scene is because he like gets he saves himself by ripping off a one of the penises from the statue, and he falls into the woman's apartment, and he's walking at her with this concrete penis. And literally the next scene is the police captain's like, and you attacked a woman with a concrete dildo? What is going on, Frank? Like, it's just, I mean, that's the
Well,
kind of
no,
crap
it gets
you're
even
looking at
funnier
with this
because
movie.
then Jane he's like, "I was at Vincent's house," and she goes, "Oh, did he show you his priceless collection of antique vases and his oil paintings and, like, all the things that he destroyed?"
And his player piano.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and he's like, "Yeah, no, I done," and just, like, cuts her off, but she's listening everything that he destroyed when he says it.
right. And so, actually, like right after that, because like she fires Frank, or she doesn't fire Frank, but she's like, Vince, if we play nice, Ludwig's not gonna press charges,
Mhm.
but you're away, you're done. Like you're not
Yeah,
with the queen, you're not doing anything. And Frank like
and then
keeps
that
like
part,
goes home.
the queen oh, never mind, continue.
Yeah, Frank goes home, and that's when Jan's like, or Jane is like, hey, I keep mixing Jan and Jane, from The Office.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
why, but that's when Jane like goes there and has that conversation, and she's like, "Hey, Mr. Ludwig, wanted to talk to you at one of his chemical factories," which is another great gag because he goes there and the henchman comes out and he pulls a gun on Frank and he's like, "I got a message for you from Ludwig," and he's talking while he's firing. He misses Frank, and Frank's like, "I'm sorry, man. Quit firing your gun while you're trying to give me the message. I can't hear what you're saying," which is it's just so dumb. It's
yeah.
great. I don't know. I love it.
Well,
And that's when it gets to the scene I really want to talk about was when then he knows like Ludwig's completely surprised because he set Frank up to get killed.
yeah,
Anyways, long story short, Ludwig is giving the queen an ancient musket or like a Civil War musket or something like that.
mhm,
And Frank is there's like a band there, and the queen comes out, and Frank the horns go off. Frank gets all disoriented. He sees Ludwig pointing a gun at the queen and tackles the queen onto this table, and they slide for an impressively long time down this table. But that's the part that, like, I swear, I'm sure I caught this at some point when I was younger, but like today I'm watching that movie this morning, and they're showing the newspapers of like, and it's Drebin like accosts Queen. Every picture like he's on top of her, right? In the main picture, like the first one you
yeah.
see. Every other picture, they're in a different sexual position. Like there's one where he's like doggy style behind her, and she's like making like a shocked face, and like it just cracked me up. I was like, how did I never like I don't remember that, but I'm like I said, I'm sure I saw it, and it's just this movie's like the gift that keeps giving. But then that's when he gets finally fired, but Jane rolls up to the police station and tells him that like you're right, like he's gonna use some like hypnosis thing, and one of the players is gonna. No, she doesn't know about the hypnosis thing. She just says that she found out one of the players is gonna kill the queen during the seventh inning stretch. Which, by the way, Rachel and I looked up the lady who plays the queen in this movie because she is a dead ringer for Queen Elizabeth, and she has 37. Her name was Jeanette something. I can't remember her
Yeah, I
last
forgot what you said her last name was.
but she has 37 acting credits, 29 of which she is playing either Queen Elizabeth, credited as Queen Elizabeth the Second, or simply the Queen. So this lady enjoyed a career. Plus, we think she's still alive, closing in on 100 years, because nothing says that she's passed away. So, like, she's outlived the actual Queen. What was it? Jeanette S. Word? Wasn't it an S last name? Like,
Maybe hold on.
I
Nikki
thought you were looking it up. I'm
oh,
sorry.
no. Sorry, hold on, Nikki again.
Jeanette
Charles.
Charles?
Yeah. There's no way
Like,
she's still
okay,
alive.
so
She'd literally be almost 100 years old. She's alive. She's 96.
why do you say that? Betty White almost made it to 100. The Queen, I think, almost made it to 100. Like the actual Queen.
Yeah, she literally all of her pictures are her just as the queen.
So I mean, yeah, like that's all she ever did.
It's
But then we get to the baseball game because Jane comes and he goes, "Why are you telling me this?" And she said, "I love cops." And then all the cops like try to hook up with her, ick up, if you will. That's when you get to the baseball game, which okay, Frank's got to figure out how to get down to the field because they're trying to save the queen, and that's when like he goes and he becomes Enrico Palazzo, and that's one of my favorite jokes in the movie is he is singing the national anthem so bad, like he's like bombs in the air, like he's just like ba 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 ba, like that. There's parts where he does that, but my favorite part of all of it is that at one point they cut to Enrico Palazzo hogtied on a couch, just screaming at Frank, terribly singing the national anthem, and underneath it it says Enrico Palazzo, and he's just like, no, just screaming. It's like because the reality is he knows that no one cares that like it wasn't actually Enrico Palazzo. Like
it's
it's so like I mean essentially like no one's gonna want him anymore because he was so bad. But that was great. Then he like, takes out the umpire like, excuse me, is this bat made out of wood? It hits him in the head. Um and then, like I said, then Frank becomes the greatest homer umpire to ever umpire a baseball.
he is so much fun.
And I love we never even talked about like okay, so the first time you find out about the hypnosis assassins is with the overarching villain of the trilogy who like you don't know who he works for, like they never, I mean he dies in the third one, but his name is Pap Schmear, and he is in all three movies as Pap Schmear. And when he's like, how are you gonna like he Ricardo Montalban's like, let me ask you, what's the best kind of assassin? And Pap Smear's like, I guess the one that doesn't get caught. He was like, yes, or one that doesn't even know they're an assassin at all. And the woman who plays his assistant is the Zucker's mom, and she is also in all three Naked Gun movies. Um, but he's in one scene in like this one. He's I forget how often he's in the second one, and then the third one like is when he dies because Nick the Slasher McGurk um, blows him up in his private plane while he's looking at a Playboy of Anna Nicole Smith. But overall, I love this movie. At the end, Jane does try to kill him, and I'm just gonna say I'm not gonna tell you what happens, but when Ricardo Montalban dies at the end of this movie, it is one of the best over like it's just overkill
Yeah.
in the best possible sense of the word
Well, I'm
because
also not gonna spoil it, but I do wanna point out one of my favorite
it
parts of the
involves the
movie.
USC marching band. That's all I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Before my dream school. Before we wrap, I wanted to say one of my favorite parts of this movie that we haven't talked about is how his detective department's like version of Q from James Bond is they point
Oh,
out the
Ted.
insane thing. Yeah, but they point out this insane thing about characters like that that are the tech guys or like the forensic guys where you're like, here is this information I need. Can you run this? And they're like, yeah, but look at all of these things I created. You're
Yeah.
like, because he even goes, what about that? He goes, yeah, I'll get to
And
that.
he's like, "Let me show you one more thing, Frank." And he's like, "Look at this." Al is great too, because Al is like, he's so big that all you see is his torso and
Yeah.
legs.
And then he
And
drops a
he eats
banana.
the banana, and Frank goes, "You got something on your mouth?" And Al goes like this. And he's like, "No, the other side." He goes like that, and the banana, like the banana he just ate, like falls
Goes
down.
out.
And it's Ted and Al. Those are the tech guys, and they're in all three movies. Um, I really want to do more Naked Gun movies because I don't want to ruin it, but Rachel and I had an aunt, and her name was Ruth, and she was our great aunt, but she babysat Rachel, and she was mean. Like she loved Rachel and she loved her family, but like she
I
like
was the
was
only
just
one I
like
think she was nice to, like,
yeah,
famously.
she I mean like it's one of those like mean with love. Like, I don't want to make her seem like she's this terrible person because that's not it. It was just like Oscar the Grouch would be a good way to describe her. Is like, people liked her. She had friends, but like her default was like grouchy. I mean, like I would get dropped off from school by like good friends of mine, and they would go home and call, and she'd be like, "He's not here. Quit calling." And she'd like hang up, and then they call back and be like, "Dude, I know he's there. I just dropped him off." And she wouldn't. She just hang up again. Like that was just like her mo. But the Naked Gun movies gave us one magical moment. And it was in the Naked Gun 33 and a third. And she was mad because we were all there. We shouldn't have been there, but she watched that movie with us. There's a scene in that movie where she cackled harder than anybody. And I am just going to wait till we get to that movie to talk about that glorious moment. But it is remembered by all who were there, especially one man who gave just as much as she did to him. And that man is named Mole. And that's all I'm going to say.
I was just gonna
But
say mole.
they had some great arguments, and it all ended that day when we were watching Naked Gun
It is
33 and the third in that living room.
truly, granted, when we watch these movies later, we'll talk about her more, but it is very funny the different the difference between how Patrick interacted with our great aunt Ruth and how I interacted with her. First of all, I called her Grandma Ruth because when I was a kid, I thought Aunt Ruth sounded weird. So she was Grandma Ruth, which I think my actual grandma did not like, but I was like 4. And then she used to babysit me, and she would always make sure I had on, like, Blue's Clues, or I had off on whatever show I wanted, and then if I wanted anything in her house, like, she had dolls and shit, she'd be like, "Yeah, you can take it." She bought me my Barbie alarm clock that, like, looked like her because it was Barbie driving with, like, a thing on her head, like, loved me, was so
Aunt Ruth kind of resembled Lucille Ball,
yeah,
just so like,
like, red hair, real tall and skinny.
okay, so then let me say our relationship. Okay, so now I just like wake up at 5:30 in the morning, no alarm, and I'm just up, right? But back in my younger days when I was between 10 and 18, I really actually probably let's be real, like 10 and 30, I
I was
really
like 10
struggled
and
to like wake
18.
up.
Patrick, I
Yeah,
remember listening to your alarm clock yelling at you in
I
Spanish.
kind of we get it. I struggled to wake up. I didn't interrupt your story this time.
Just saying.
And I struggled to get up. Well, Aunt Ruth's solution for that was to like take water and ice and put it in the freezer a little bit so it's extra cold, and then dump it on me every morning and said, "Get up, it's time for school." And then she would leave. I never was late for school when she babysat, you know. But yeah, that was my relationship with Aunt Ruth is tell your friends to go somewhere else. Don't stay here. I hate the summer because you guys are all around. Oh, Rachel, you're so cute. If you listen to the Howard Stern show, it was like Crazy Alice with Fred versus everyone else on the show. Like, hi, Fred.
I mean, it's the
I
truth.
love you, Fred.
Amber said, "I only care for this one child. Everyone else can leave me alone." Um,
Yeah, but one glorious moment brought to us by Leslie Nielsen and the Zucker brothers and Abrams. I can't remember his first name, but Rachel,
yes.
why don't you tell us your thoughts overall, Naked Gun? You want to do another one?
Yeah, because they were it was surprisingly I thought it was gonna be one of those comedies, kind of like well, I'm trying to think of I guess I'm trying to think which one would be, like, very, like, "Oh, this didn't hold up, I don't like it as much as I used to," but I can't off the top of my head. But I thought it was gonna be one of those where I'm, like, watching it, like, "Yeah, this is not anything that I remember, like, I don't like it that much." If that wasn't the case, I was like, "Oh, no, I still like these movies. They're still pretty good. I enjoy watching them." and it wasn't like, "Oh, I have to watch this naked," like, I was like, "Nah, this is perfect.
You're
We can bring back comedies that are, like, 30 minutes and just, like, nonsense for those, or not 30 minutes, an hour and 30 minutes, and just
hour
nonsense."
and 25 minutes actually is
Yeah,
this movie.
but just, like, I was like, "Oh, it was way more fun than I even remembered," and so I was like, "This held up." Leslie Nielsen's still hilarious.
Oh, you like I was just thinking, you know how like it's like Harrison Ford's Indiana Jones, like
Yeah,
don't make an Indiana Jones movie with like Chris Pratt or something like that. Just don't do it. Like
yeah,
no one wants that. I don't even think Chris Pratt wants that, even though that would be cool for him until everyone and then he realized everyone would hate it. But it's like I read years ago. This was before Leslie Nielsen passed away, so I think it was about 10 years ago. They were going to do the Naked Gun Part 4, and it was going to be Ed Helms was Frank Drebin's like son. And I'm like, I love Ed Helms. I love Andy Bernard, but absolutely not. Like, do not do that. Like, just let them be. Like, just let them be. Like, they're not. They try. Like they're not redoing Charlie Chaplin. You know what I mean? Like,
they're just
it's like they're
making
like they tried it with the Three Stooges, and even though that movie was funny, no one wanted it. They wanted the actual Three Stooges. It's the same thing. It's like Leslie Nielsen is Frank Drebin, Ed's dead, Nordberg's dead, Ted's probably dead. Like they're just it's just stop. You can
yeah,
make something else in the same vein, inspired by. But why do you gotta do the Naked Gun? Like just leave it alone.
yeah.
But I would like to do a trailer for part two, if you don't mind,
A
because
trailer?
yeah, just a little like because not so much a trailer, but like when you get to part two, they're not in LA anymore. They're in DC, and it doesn't really get explained. But like it's all about escalation. And the reason why I think you like part two better is because there's musical theater elements in it. Because like Robert Goulet is the bad guy, and
Mhm,
he's extreme Goulet. Um, also, there's one of my favorite scenes in that movie is that someone tries to kill Jane, and she's in the shower, and how she gets caught is, or how they catch the killer is she's in the shower going, memories like the corners of my mind, and she's singing it, and the hitman's like sitting there, and he's like putting the like silencer on the gun, and he's like misty watercolor memories, and he's singing it with her and she doesn't know until she stops, and then he like just goes into it like hardcore, and that's what I mean. I don't want to. We could talk for another 2 hours on just the Naked Gun 2 and 3, so we'll save them because they are awesome. And if you haven't seen them, take my word for it. Watch it. If you are into absurdity, like these are like the way like if you're like we should try to make parody movies again, like don't watch Scary Movie, don't watch the Wayans brothers version of parody movies, which watch these because this is how you make a parody movie. Airplane, you get like the key is the actors. I mean, they got people that were in dramatic movies like uh uh eh, like I mean I already said all that. They just but like it's great. Just watch it. Take my
I
word for it.
I agree.
Rachel, can you tell
Yes.
people where they can find you on the internets?
Yes, you can read my work at The Mary Sue, at Collider, and you can listen to my other podcast, Padre Pascal and the Fordcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. And then obviously just keep listening to Cinema Sibs. Patrick, can you tell people where? Oh, and you can find me on Twitter at Rachel Leishman, on Instagram at Rachel_Leishman, and on TikTok with the same handle. But Patrick, tell the people where they can find you on the internet.
Where love has been outlawed and justice has no name. That's where I'll be fighting the good fight. And I'd just like to say one more thing, if I may.
Go ahead.
Patrick, this is Patrick, you sexy son of a bitch. I hope to see you in X-Men movie soon with Deadpool and Hugh Jackman.
Oh my god.
I like to say it like Jackman. You know, it's almost like, "Hello, Newman." It's like
Until next time, goodbye.